Who was Nietzsche's Zarathustra? In fact, we know virtually nothing about the historical Zarathustra. We know more about Nietzsche. I must emphasize that this poetry cannot be understood without reading the author's other works first. As all fictional characters are one part of their author's personality, Nietzsche's Zarathustra was a part of Nietzsche's personality, at the same way. But Nietzsche's Zarathustra was more than fictional character, he was Nietzsche's imaginary friend. One may ask, why adult needs imaginary friends? The simplest answer is because, unlike real people, an imaginary friend never betrays you, because he is you. And Nietzsche had been betrayed, rejected by people in terrible manner. The fact that someone has imaginary friends even in childhood, especially in adulthood, is the clear evidence of terrible anxiety and social rejection. Having imaginary friend is seemingly preferring fiction over reality. But sometimes the fiction can be truer truth than reality. Because fiction takes place entirely in you. Anyways, Nietzsche's Zarathustra was born in this inspiration. But in order to understand this masterpiece, we need to know the background of its creation. There is a fundamental difference between choosing voluntary solitude and being forsaken by others in depression and loneliness. Nietzsche's choice has fallen to this character not accidentally. There's only one thing which is more dreadful for humans than fear of death, the fear of life. Indeed, facing with the horror of existence can be causing or involving extreme suffering, fear, or unhappiness. However, if you do not feel the emotional necessity of belonging to crowd, to eliminate this fear, you are, my friend, the chosen one. And Nietzsche is the perfect example of how genius and antisocial traits walk hand in hand. The basic truth has been given, that every sane person realize in spirit of Schopenhauer. That is, we are living not only on planet of lottery winners, but on the planet of those sentenced to death as well. We have to start something with this. Here is the motivation of smart. Every superior human being will instinctively aspire a secret citadel, where he is set free from crowd, as Nietzsche wrote. Very few are mad for independence, it is privilege of strong. No one is likely to consider a doctrine true merely because it makes happy or makes virtuous. Happiness and virtue are not arguments. Indeed, this is what Nietzsche pointed out. And this is why Nietzsche is the most nonconformist thinker, and the most disoriented as well. Perhaps he is the most misunderstood philosopher as well. Zarathustra was 30 when he left home, and the lake of his home, and went into the mountains. There he enjoyed his spirit and solitude, and for 10 years he did not weary of it. But after then he returned. The first person he met after a decade was an old saint in the forest mountainside. When Zarathustra arrived at the nearest town, he found many people assembled in the marketplace, for it had been announced that the rope dancer would give a performance. And Zarathustra spoke unto people, I teach you the Superman. Man is a rope stretched between animal and Superman. What is great in man? He is a bridge and not the goal. What is lovable in man is that he is an overgoing and downgoing. Thus spoke Zarathustra. One thing is fascinating in this story, how averageness fears of deepness, and it fears of profound thoughts at the same way. Everyone is aware of their own mortality. Each and every one of us is going to die. But very few are willing to face their own mortality voluntarily. Most people want to divert their attention from this, involuntarily. Most escape to banality. But they lose the real antidote to this issue, the meaning. And the meaning of life is to end, but in noble way. If there was no suffering, no mortality, only eternal life, life would lose meaning. If something is available unlimitedly, it has no value anymore. The finitude of life makes every moment unique and unrepeatable. Just like the tightrope walker, we don't have a second chance. The ropeless mountain climber has no margin of error. Mistake means instant death. Any mistake. People might ask, why they need to choose suffering intentionally. What is suffering? Facing your own mortality, and being okay with it. Facing the fact you're going to lose everything and everyone in your life, including the life itself. The martyrdom of philosopher, his sacrifice of truth. But what a truth? Which truth we want to pick up from infinite numbers of truth? What leads us to that very truth? And here is the deal. The good is no longer good as common good. If in rare cases the truth of philosopher prevails, urges philosopher to overcome his own result in fear of conformity. The philosopher as a seeker of truth, the lover of wisdom fails if his truth prevails. Which is very ironic. In this sense the philosopher is no longer a seeker of truth but a seeker of solitude. But the good news for philosopher, and this is a failure of true philosophy as well, the truest truth can never be popular. The truth is the last shelter of profound thinker. Very few venture there. The motivation of averageness is the opposite. All they need is as much truth as it does not yet alienate them from the crowd. This is the inferior, or popular truth. For strong it's only the portion of truth, suiting the taste of the crowd. Superman cannot stand banality. Superman is well aware of mitigating necessary suffering as nothing else than eliminating meaning. For the Superman banality is unnecessary suffering, as everything which lacks meaning. Zarathustra turned sad. You know nothing about the Superman. People might ask, why they need to choose suffering intentionally. The answer might be, because suffering is inevitable either way. But running away of suffering multiplies suffering. If you cross suffering, on the other hand, you fight back suffering. You ought not to imagine the Superman as some Marvel comic superhero, but rather as a profound thinker, a true philosopher actually. An anchorite like Nietzsche's Zarathustra. And fake friends are worse than your enemies. The worst are always those closest to you, and the best are those farthest from you. Finding good company is a journey, a voyage to unknown. The smarter you are, the longer this journey, because your needs are so much greater. Suffering like a tree grows along with the tree of life. As tall as tree grows, as tall the life and suffering grow. If you cut down the tree of suffering, you inevitably cut down the tree of life too. And life will reach light through suffering. But you can't get rid of suffering at the bottom of existence anyway, only of life. That's a whole different suffering, the unnecessary. The bleak stagnation, in eternal darkness of banality and mediocrity. The darkness is the forest of masses. Is the growth of fun for the tree? Far from it. It's a bloody suffering. Then why it grows? Because the alternative of growth is even worse. This is the secret of the top 1% in functioning society. Are your fellow trees interested in your growth? Never believe it. They will do everything to prevent it. Not because they want to reach the light instead of you, but they don't want you to reach the light either, because your achievement judges them relentlessly. It points out their insufficiency, what they want to avoid at all costs. Thus the advice of Zarathustra, select friend not among your neighbors, but among the farthests. They are the light. And finally, when Zarathustra left the people, his disciples were eager to follow him, but he left them either, saying, I will return when everyone will deny me. I will teach you more the Superman. If you want to learn more about this topic, please visit my website. You can find a link below in the description. Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe.